so Assalamualaikum and very good morning to everyone and also to Sejo. So today I'm going to present my class 1 for English language awareness, ESLB 3273, which is context in language. So first of all, again, we're going to learn what is context in language. So it refers to the situation, background, or environment in which words are used. So why learning context in language matters in English teaching or learning? So first, it prevents misunderstanding. It also teaches appropriateness, and it also improves communication skills. And there are 3 types of context. The first one is situational, cultural, and interpersonal. So for this task, I have chosen 2 stories from my storytelling task, which is the first one is the hare and the tortoise, and the second one is the dog and the bone. So I didn't include any videos for these 2 stories because I know that we are already familiar with these 2 stories, right? So we know how the plot is. Okay, now let's jump right to the overview of the stories. So for the first story, it is the hare and the tortoise. A fast but arrogant hare challenges a slow tortoise to a race. Overconfident, the hare takes a nap mid-race, allowing the tortoise to win through steady persistence. And for the second story, we have the dog and the bone. So it is about the dog carrying a bone, sees his reflection in the water, and mistakes it for another dog with a bigger bone. Out of greed, he snaps at the other dog and loses his own bone. Now, for these 2 stories, each of them has their own context. So I've choose situational for the first story, the hare and the tortoise, and cultural for the second story, the dog and the bone. Okay, now without further ado, we're going to look at the first story, the hare and the tortoise. Okay, so let's recap first. What's the story about? So first of all, the hare mocks the tortoise and challenges him to race because he sees him as a tortoise, so he thought he must be slow. And the hare races ahead but stops to rest, and then the tortoise keeps going and wins the race. Okay, so why did I choose situational for this story? So the race setting determines the way the characters in the story speak and act. For example, the hare's arrogance versus the tortoise's calm determination. So for this example, when we look at the hare's arrogance, it is when before the race starts, when the hare challenged the tortoise, he saw that, oh, he is a tortoise, he must be slow, right? So the confidence that the hare had at that time brings the arrogance, so he think it must be easy to beat the tortoise in a race. And the tortoise calm determination during the race, when he saw that the hare was sleeping, was resting, and then that's when the determination to continue the race and won the race and ended up won the race. Okay, so the third point is language change because of the situation. So for the story, during the competition, and when the hare challenged the tortoise, and the outcome when the race finished. So this is the values for the situational context. It shows how tone and register depend on context, which for the stories is boasting for the hare versus the polite speech for the tortoise. And students learn to adjust language to different situations which are formal, informal, competitive, and cooperative. Okay, so next we have the second story, the dog and the bone. Okay, first of all, let's recap it. So the story is about a dog who finds a bone and proudly carries it. And then he sees his reflection in the water and thinks it is another dog with a bigger bone. And out of greed, he tries to snatch it, but loses his own bone. For this story, I chose cultural. Why, you ask? Because it reflects moral lessons common across many cultures, which is greed always leads to loss. And language is influenced by cultural values that discourage selfishness and encourage contentment. So fables like the dog and the bone, like this, pass down traditions and shared wisdom through storytelling. So the values for the cultural context, it helps students learn moral-based expression and idioms. For example, don't be greedy and also be content with what you have. And it also builds awareness that English is not just grammar, but it also carries cultural lessons. It also encourages learners to compare English proverbs with their own culture sayings. Alright, so this is just the overall comparison of context. We're going to look at it. So first we have the first story, the hare and the tortoise, and also the second story, the dog and the bone. Now, for the story focus, the first story focuses on competition and perseverance. The second story focuses about greed and consequences. And for the context definition for the hare and the tortoise, it is a situational context. It is about language shaped by time, place, and event. For the second story, the dog and the bone, it is about cultural context, which is language shaped by shared values and morals. So for example, for the first story, we have the hare's boasting and also the tortoise calm reply when the hare challenge him to race. And for the second story, we have the moral lesson that greed causes loss, based on how the dog lost his bone when he tried to snatch another bone in the reflection of the water. And the language used for the first story, the tone changed based on race setting, which are competitive, arrogant, and determined. So for the second story, we have idioms or proverbs that reflect moral teaching. So for this story, we have don't be greedy and also be content. And the teaching value for the first story, it teaches register, tone, and appropriateness in different situations. For the second story, it teaches cultural awareness and also moral-based expressions and idioms. Okay, so we're going to jump into the So how do we apply it in our teaching? So for the activities that I suggest for students, is first we're going to do harus I guess sebab tadi dulu. Oh no. Pasal apologies. So so we're going to do a role play. So just imagine we are in a classroom. So we call out two of our pupils. One will be the hare, and one will be the tortoise. So they will impersonate the hare and also the tortoise to speak like how they speak in the story. So for the example, when I as the hare, I will talk to the tortoise. You are a tortoise. You must be slow. Let's have a race then. I'll be damn sure to beat you in the race. So that's the activity for the first story. And for the second activities, we choose it for the second story. It is the idiom hunt. So basically, when you have the idiom in the dog story, which is don't be greedy, we as a teacher should also provide the materials which is more idioms that mean the same, that bring the same meaning as the idiom that we have in the story, which for now is don't be greedy. So and then okay, so we have the teaching values of this activity. So it makes learning interactive and practical. By interactive and practical, it means that how this pupil will act as the character in the stories, and they will interact with each other in the classroom. And the second values is it helps students to link English to real life communication. And the last value is it builds awareness that language consists of words plus context. Okay, so now we're going to look at the reflection and the conclusion. So the first one is the dog and bone shows how culture shapes meaning for the stories, greed versus contentment. And the hare and the tortoise shows how situations shape language use, which for the story, boasting versus humility. And then the last reflection is both highlight that English is more than grammar. It's about using language appropriately. Okay, so now we have arrived at conclusion. So the conclusion is context is the background that gives true meaning to words, while situational teaches adaptability. And for cultural, it teaches awareness of values and idioms. And okay, so this is the references. And that's all from me. Thank you.
Very calm teacher. Very calm.
Uh-oh.